This is Robert Caple, Bob Caple. I've been thinking about this all day, but instead of putting something on Facebook, it's easier to go online. I know you can't see me very well. Anyway, I want to talk about the veterans in our family, and I guess I'll start with it should be in the title. Jessie Free, he was mom's brother. He was in the army, and I can't remember when he went in, 43 or something. But anyway, he was a conscientious objector, and I can't remember who the president was that he says everybody fight. Jessie was works in the Panther Division, patent. Can't remember what it is now, but anyway, he works in the office and types and stuff like that. And when the president said, I think it was Truman, when the president said everybody fight, whatever they did, they were out there. Well, he ended up with a handful of, I don't know whether they were buddies or just there. And they were guarding a bridge that was going over into Belgium. The German Panzer tank division was trying to get across that bridge because if they could do a lot of damage. But that bunch of soldiers kept the Germans from crossing that bridge, and none of them had. All they had is small arms fire. Uncle Jesse told me I didn't. He he talked to me. He didn't. I didn't ask. We were in where he lived. Anyway, it was in Kansas, and he told me that they were out of almost. They were almost. They only had a few rounds. They were out of food. Some of them didn't have shoes. They didn't have winter clothing, and they were there in the winter. And and they were trying to guard the bridge to keep the Panzer Division from coming over into Belgium. But I remember Mom, all of a sudden, she said, "You go tell Mrs. Blevin, she lives right down the block, that we need to go to church. I got to pray for Jesse. He's in trouble." And Jesse told me that night a blue haze came over that whole area where they were, and they were in foxholes, but there was snow, and they didn't have fires, and they were cold and out of food and hungry, and he said he thought it was God, that blue haze. And the next morning, the Panzer Division, I don't know whether it was morning or evening, Patton's division came in and rescued him, freed him, and he also was in the outfit that freed the first concentration camp in Germany. And he talked about how there was the box cars as far as you could see was full of dead people. They were gonna torch them for their gold teeth and gold. And he said the people that was in the prisons were all skin and bones, and it was really bad. But anyway, I want to say thank you, Uncle Jessie, and I want to talk about Elzie Starks. He was my brother-in-law. My sister was married to Elzie Starks. He was in Korea, Vietnam, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. He he served life like 20 some years in the army, and they would often talk about how he drank a lot. And Elzie sit on a hill with one or two other guys. They had a machine gun, and he, he, he we were in the room while he was talking to mom or somebody, and he said they melted 3 machine guns down in 2 or 3 days, however it was, and they piled the bodies in piles. They were sitting on a hill in Korea. I think they called it Port South Hill. But when you go through that, and it's not one or two, it's 3 or 4 or 5, 600 men that was killed, a lot of them. And they were in the barrels of the guns. Any weapon you fire that often and that much, it's going to melt about barrels. But I understood because I was in the guards then, and I understood Elzie because I can't remember whose funeral it was, and I could tell he had been drinking, and he said, I can't stand funerals. I can't come, Mom. It's just, he was talking about Betty's mom, my mom, because him and Elzie was pretty close. Elzie was a really nice guy, but it just, the war that he went through, and people don't understand when you're there and you're in the army and you're trained, and a lot of them never took I was at Fort Carson, and all of a sudden they started giving us Russian history. And I told my buddy, I said, there's something going on. And that was Sunday. We started having to do stuff on Sunday too, because then the commanding officer showed up. Well, he never showed up. I said, Kenny, I told you there's something going on. He said, no. He said, the company commander come out there and he said, I ain't got time. I'm going to tell you just the way it is. We're into it with Russia. You guys get in there and turn your guns, and all you have to turn in here. Don't clean them. Just get them turned in. And within 24 hours, you're going to be back in your home units. In 48 hours, you'll probably be sitting off the coast of Russia. It was no game. It was no war. It was no game. And I just want to take the time to talk about Elzie, and I liked Elzie. Elzie was a friendly guy, and man, he had about over, I think Uncle Jessie won several medals. I don't know. I know he got medals. I think at least 3, but Elzie chest was loaded with them. But anyway, who else was I going to talk about? I talked about Elzie and Jessie. I wanted to talk some about Charles. His first trick was in the Navy. He didn't like the Navy because But anyway, when his he land he landed, he was a control operator. In other words, he landed the jets on the ships, aircraft carriers. But then he went in the Air Force and he started making pretty. I think he was like an E6 when he got out. Charles got out because when he was in Vietnam, his wife got her arm cut off, and he, he, she needed help, so he went. He had to. He was like 16 years in by then, but he also learned meteorology and stuff like that, and I can't remember what he ended up being, but Charles had a real good corps in the Air Force, and when he got out, he estimated the cost. He got a job, like they'd bring them ships in, and he would go estimate what it was going to cost to fix the ships and stuff. But Charles, Charles never, he wasn't in Vietnam long, but he told Mom, because when he went, I seen him, and he had a 45 on, and I thought that was funny. And he had a briefcase strapped to his wrist. And he said, and they told him, whatever you do, nobody gets what's in this briefcase. So he got there all right and nothing happened. But I was never really close to Charles because there was 9 kids, and I was in, I was maybe 5 or 6, first or second grade when Charles went in the Navy. Then he got married to June Long. She was a nice lady. I remember she gave me this blue, it's like that, got that glitter stuff on, had it on now. Oh, I felt like a star wearing it because we didn't have much money then. Dad was hurt, sick, had a bad heart, and we lived out south of Independence. And anyway, so who else am I going to talk about? I wanted to talk about Jack. Jack was in the Navy. I think he was a CB. He was in Vietnam. I don't know what all of CB, I know he was trying to dive. They were trying to dive and put mines on ships, but I ain't gonna tell you what happened there. But he got wounded in Vietnam, and about a week or two later, he was still he was in. From there, they sent him to Egypt, and from Egypt, he went somewhere else. And then when Carl passed away, he come home. Carl's my mom's sister's boy. He was. He played the guitar and sang. They copied several. I mean, he wrote several songs, but Jack I think he served most of his career until he got hurt. And I think he loved the Navy. But I can remember when we were at Carl's funeral that he had almost passed out, and Jessie was there, and he went and grabbed him, and he was standing pretty close to him. But Uncle Jesse was quiet. Clay Center, that's the name of that town where he lived. He lived in Emporia at that time. His mom, we went to the park for some reason, and there was a William Allen White Memorial there, and she said, "Well, we're related to the Whites, so we're probably related to everybody." But anyway, I did want to respect them because I was in there. I was never like these guys I'm talking about now. So I'm talking about Jack, and I want to talk about Jack Jr. Jack Jr. He went in. He was in the army and did 23 or 4 years. He went in a private and come out I think a colonel. Yeah, but he would. He's now a pastor in Dixon at uh, a Baptist church there. I think he's doing pretty good. He's never been backwards like me. Jack's, Jack went in the army as a private, and he every once in a while he'd call me. Well, I got my first year of college done. I'm gonna be an officer, and I thought, sure you are. And I remember what the officers went through in guards, but some of them didn't make it, even though they was on, you know, like a doctor. There's a in and an out doctor. There's extern and an intern. And I told my wife that she was a nurse. And, oh, there's no extern. I said there was one at the hospital. He was an extern. But anyway, see, I lost my place. Jack Jr. And then when we lived in West Virginia, he started calling me. Well, I just got my last year of college done, and I'm applying to go to OCS school, which is Officers Candidate School. I thought, well, good luck. I really didn't make it. Jack's pretty smart. I mean, Jack made good. All these people made good grades in school. I made like English. I didn't like English. And Betty, Elzie was Betty's husband. His sister taught me. Boy, she was, you know, but I didn't like to read, so I'd sit there and pretend I'd have the book open like I was reading, but I really wasn't reading. And say, Robert, you read now, but I would listen to what they were saying, and I could find my place pretty fast. But anyway, I got to get back on Jack Jr. But anyway, he went through officer candidate school and made it, and that's when he started. He got to be an officer, and it was, even for me, it was pretty. I was really proud of him because when you come up from the bottom and you retire at 23 or 4 years, because that's really something to do that kind of accomplishment. And our family wasn't poor. Our family was poor. The poor people used to make fun of us. You hear people say that. I'm serious. When we lived in Independence, back then they call it Color Town. I had to go through Color Town to get to my house. And the bridge I had to cross over was dark. And it was every once in a while somebody'd be killed going across that bridge, robbed. And it was scary, but I mean, that was poor. But anyway, I think Jack made pretty good money. He when he got out, he did electrical work. And then he got to where Jack Sr. passed away in Columbia. I came up and I knew Jack. He was my brother, but we really didn't. Jack ran around with some rough kids in McPherson, and after you get out of grade school, we kind of got separated. We lived in the same home, but I always liked or loved Jack. It's hard for me to say I love somebody. But Jack, I don't know. I think the Navy, the Army is, when you're in E3, you're E3. But in the Navy, if you get one stripe, according to Jack Jr., that's an E1 and on up. You have to have three stripes to be what in the Navy, what in the Army is an E3. But I think Jack Jr. got out as a major, but he really accomplished a lot. And uh, I hope I don't embarrass him because he he's really he really he really impressed me because of the, I don't know how many conflicts. I know he was in two or three at least because that's when they were in the desert, and they would they would go in and search the buildings, and like they taught you in the Army, like if you find a box laying there, you're in a war zone, don't just pick it up. You see them on TV in war movies, picking it up, because just because it don't mean that there ain't an explosive device in that and could kill you. And what they were doing was they would put them in the middle of the road so it would blow up underneath the vehicle. But Jack said that they built up the bellies of them, but the jeeps or the trucks or. Well, I know he was in two or three conflicts when it was going on, but I don't remember which ones. But anyway, I've been on here 22 minutes, but I wanted to say I don't know how to say it. I wanted to tell the world that my family fought in the Army too. My 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 dad was William Herbert. His dad was William Herbert Caple. So his dad, how far back? Anyway, my my great grandpa was in the Civil War in Alabama. I think he was in the 41st Mississippi. He fought for the South. They moved a unit to Mississippi, and so Reuben Caples, who my great grandpa was. My grandpa was William. They died in Gale County, Arkansas, Clarendon, Arkansas. But then when they went over there, it changed two or three times. It was started out as the 41st or something, and it changed two or three times in Alabama. They moved to Mississippi. It changed again. Well, that outfit was captured by the North, and the North said the North said if you will serve in which I think it was the 50th Missouri. I've got the papers. And if you ever do genealogy, the papers they're not sheets of paper. They're big, like you can get. I would go to the National Archives and get census records and land records and everywhere I could on the Frees and the Caples. And like one of the Caples was Charity. She was living with the Francis Hill, which was a first or second cousin. Well, your names just goes all over the place, but I was talking about Reuben. He was a sergeant, and he had three brothers. Two of them was killed in the war, and that left. I can't remember. There was a John Caple, William Caple, and another one, but they went to what is that? One of the counties on the eastern shore of Missouri. No, Arkansas. Craig. That's not Craig. But anyway, all that borders Tennessee. But so there was Caples that moved there. But anyway, they were through Reuben, and Reuben had brothers. So, but anyway, I'm getting off of what I'm supposed to be talking about. I just wanted to say, so he served for a year, and then they paroled him. They, he was actually a prisoner. They paroled him. But in 1872, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of those Civil War soldiers started dying because when they were in Tennessee, they were there in winter, and they were there. They had no clothes. I mean, they had no coats hardly. A lot of them didn't have shoes. They didn't have very good food, if they had food. And it just finally, I can't remember what they were captured, but by the North. But anyway, it was even the Civil War was no ball game. But I did want to say that I'm thankful that I had people in my family like Uncle Jessie and like Charles. Oh, Harold was in there too. He was in the army. He went in at the end of toward the end like Jessie. But they were stationed somewhere where the Russian army was right across the fence. But he would talk about they were in England. They were in England for a while because he would have to. I'm talking about Harold now, my brother, but he would have to go from somewhere, and he'd see the Alpha Tower every day and pick up tanks and take them back to where he got them. But anyway, he ended up with a hole in his heart, so he was just hard. But I wanted to thank Jack Jr. and Jack and Harold and Uncle Jesse and Charles because of their service. And I wanted to get off now, but I just wanted to do this. Because I respect them. Lord bless you.